Darian Devries, the head coach of West Virginia, has quickly become a candidate for the Indiana head basketball coaching job. But would it work in Bloomington?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this, the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax, ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed. Head over to TurboTax.com today to get matched with your expert. Well, this name has started popping up. Darian Devries, the head coach of West Virginia men's basketball. And it's a name that kind of just came up out of nowhere. And I figured what better way to get some information about the head coach of West Virginia than talking with the host of the Locked On West Virginia podcast, Mountaineer Paul. He had me on his show. We talked about DeVries. We talked about whether this is legit and would it work in Bloomington. Here's my conversation with Mountaineer Paul. Happy to be here. Excited to talk about something that has really just come up in the last handful of days. I mean, this is something that I was not fully expecting, and then here we are, and it seems like it started to catch a little wind. So excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah, so we talked on the phone earlier today, and I was just kind of trying to get your vantage point on all this, and I wasn't shocked because Darian DeVries is going to come up for jobs, obviously, after what he's done this year. But I think I was really surprised in some wording you used. It just kind of popped up out of nowhere. Can you kind of talk about where some of the, I mean, you don't have to get specific, but where are you hearing some of these things? What parts of the university do you maybe think they're coming from? If you can even reveal anything like that, not trying to put you on the spot.
Sure. I think for right
like message
now,
boards or,
Yeah. For right now, I do think it is, I'm not going to say just smoke because there's a negative connotation to that to where, oh, it's not true. People are just talking. I think the conversations are at least being had for his name to be considered, right? I don't think any phone calls have been made. I don't think there's been even contact made between IU and his camp. But I do think as Indiana has slowly crossed names off the list or vice versa, where people have crossed IU off their list, you got to have a running list, right? In any sort of coaching search, you can't just have one name and hope that it works out. So I think this is what this is, hey, who would make a good fit? Who do we think could work? And while I think DeVries is still kind of off on maybe not the back burner, he's still very fresh in this coaching search. And so I'm not hearing anything official yet. I just think he's somebody that is starting to get thrown in these conversations.
Right. And along with what we talked about, and you're hearing about that, SB Nation put a report out as well earlier. I think it was yesterday on the 9th, actually 2 days ago. And it was talking about as the coaching search narrows, you're getting past the likes of Brad Stevens, Dusty May, TJ Otzelberger, Scott Drew, names that you would honestly think that Indiana would have a legitimate shot at. And we've seen a lot of blue bloods go through this here lately. The playing field is so much more even with NIL now. It's no longer the brand power that drives people to a university. What's that been like for Indiana to kind of go through that?
Yeah, I mean, look, Indiana in recent years has not been relevant consistently. That's no secret. I'm not afraid to tell you that since I talk about it every single day. But as a brand, yes, it's still IU. It's still Bloomington. It's still Assembly Hall. And so I still think that carries a lot of weight. I really do.
Sure.
And the NIL money that Indiana has to play with is truly incredible. People don't understand how much money Indiana has and is willing to use to be good at athletics. That's on football and basketball, but of course, talking basketball here particularly. So I think when you start to hear some of those names, like you mentioned, because those are all in the mix or were in the mix of Brad Stevens or Scott Drew or guys like that who have basically come and gone in this coaching search, it is a little painful. It is a little humbling. It's, man, this is going to be maybe harder than we thought to try and find the future of Indiana basketball, because we can't afford Indiana. We can't afford to swing and miss again. We just went through that with Mike Woodson. We thought it was a home run. Former player. He was loved by Bob Knight. I mean, it just made sense, right? And it just didn't work. And so we've had some bad endings. We've had some flameouts. We've had things that just didn't work. And that's why I think Indiana is going through as many options, as many possibilities as they can. And that's why we've landed here as one of the options to be the next head coach of Indiana basketball.
So let's get a little bit of the state of the program. And you kind of dove into that with the NIL just a little bit there at Indiana. But I mean, if I'm looking at that job, obviously from the outside in, you assume it's a great job, top 10 job, top 15 job. Absolutely. So when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking it's one of those jobs that everybody aspires to, especially if you're a basketball coach. Where is Indiana on, let's say, like exposure in the Big Ten? Where are they at? You already mentioned NIL, obviously, which is great. You talked about they got a ton of money to spend. So what's their pitch to somebody when they're going to bring a guy in? What are they telling people?
Well, I think there's a lot of positives with the NIL situation. Again, the brand still carries so much weight. And for anybody that happened to grow up anywhere near the area, they grew up in the Indiana, just, I guess, the hot time to be an Indiana fan, right? When Indiana was good. And so that is a big pitch, is come and be that, bring Indiana back to what it can be. You've got one of the most dedicated fan bases in all of college athletics. The Hoosiers are crazy fans. Even when the team sucks, they're still diehard fans. They show up at Assembly Hall. They want Indiana. Yeah, I mean, they just want us to be good. They love basketball here in this state. And so you're selling them on NIL. You're selling them on the fact that you can be the one to bring it back. And if you win here, you are beloved. You are the guy. Now, that comes with a lot of pressure, right? That comes with, people call it a fishbowl, where if you win, everything's great. If you lose, bad things can happen. And I think that's what has maybe turned some people away from it. But if you don't want that, then Indiana doesn't want you. And that's kind of where we stand right now. So again, I think the pitch is you've got everything at your disposal to work with, and you can be the next great coach of Indiana basketball. That comes with a lot of praise, man. That's a big time thing for somebody. And you just have to find the right one who's willing to take that risk and is able to pull it off.
So where do you stand with the list of candidates as they are right now? Let's just use this as a running list right here that I've got pulled up. Let's talk about Brad Brownell, Ben McCollum, Chris Collins, Will Wade, Mark Bine, and Darian Devries. Sounds like a pretty good grouping of coaches in similar spots. You could argue Brownell is at the top of that list. Do you have a personal opinion about this?
Yeah, that's a pretty updated list, I think, is a good way to put that, because of some of the names that we talked about a little bit earlier that have come and gone, whether they, publicly said they didn't want it or Indiana wouldn't make the call. I'll say this. A lot of Indiana fans wanted Chris Beard, and I just don't think that's going to happen, because that's Indiana.
That's the hire right there. If you're going to do it.
But Indiana has made it known, directly or indirectly, I guess, that if you got a past, we don't want to mess with it. And so whether that's fair
we
or
went
not,
through that.
Yeah, you guys know. Yeah, I mean, you guys know, absolutely. And whether you think it's fair or not, it is what it is. That's just kind of where Indiana stands. So with the list, I think Brownell at Clemson's a really, really good option. I talked about him on my show this week, and I think McCollum is really good. The only concern is he's only been doing it for a year at a somewhat major level, right? He's got tons of coaching experience, but you just got to see a little bit more. That's when you start talking, about some of these other names. I don't know if Chris Collins is what the fans are looking for in terms of the splash, sexy home run, oh my goodness, hire type of thing. So I don't know. I think the list is solid, but I don't think Indiana's done yet. And I think that's a very unofficial list, including with what we're talking about right here, because anybody could pop up at any time. And that's what makes this kind of fun, actually.
Absolutely. Let's go to a quick break, because on the other side of the break, let's talk about Darian Devries and his relationship with West Virginia. What are some gripes I think he would have, and why he may be a flight risk, and possibly we could lose him. Let's talk about that next, guys. This is Locked On West Virginia with Jacob Goins.
Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Monarch. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized that I was spending so much money on things that I just didn't need, like food and like fast food and delivery and just eating out rather than just saving up and buying groceries at the store. And now I can budget smarter and I can save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off of your first year. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to eat and heat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every single week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I've told you in the past how much I love Factor. The meals are delicious. They're extremely easy. You can either do them in the microwave or do them at the oven or in the oven. So whether you're at work or at home, they really are simple. You just pierce the plastic, stick it in there, and let it go. And it's delicious. You've got meat, you've got veggies, you've got just everything you could possibly want in a little dinner. And it is really, really delicious, right? Don't worry about if you're heating it up in the microwave. The flavor does not go away. I'm telling you this personally. Factor is legit. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off and use that code LockedOnCollege50 off, all one word, to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box with Factor.
And it's segment 2. I don't have a do today, but I do have a Gatorade. In segment 2, I usually crack a do, Jacob. But I don't have one to crack today.
Hey, Gatorade's same kind of color, right? You were drinking the yellow. That's
same
fine.
Company, right?
Yeah.
Same company.
Sure.
So I forgot to tell you to bring something to crack for segment 2.
Man, I missed the memo.
I screwed up again. They'll let me know in the comments. So we got about 400 people watching. Jacob, will you let everybody know real quick before we keep going, where they can find you at, what you're doing?
Yeah, Locked On Hoosiers, same way you find Locked On West Virginia, YouTube, or wherever you get your audio podcast. It's a daily podcast covering all things Indiana. And right now, yeah, it's a lot of coaching surge. We're talking NCAA tournament. Spring football just started in Bloomington, coming off a college football playoff. So however you get your podcast,
Locked On ticket
Hoosiers,
right now.
That's right, man. Kurt Signetti just got an extension. We've got a really good transfer portal class. And so if you want to check that out, yep, anywhere you get your podcast or on YouTube, just search Locked On Hoosiers.
Wow, man. Wow. That's great. I'm really glad you've got this momentum for your show and everything right now. You deserve it, man.
Appreciate that, man.
And it's not like you've had the greatest run as Indiana leading up the last few years. So you guys, I mean, it's time for a turn, right? As the world of sports turns. So I want to talk about Darian Devries and his relationship with West Virginia, because I think that's going to factor in here, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't get and look, I can't out my sources here, but I do know that he didn't get the NIL money that they wanted. It's year one. So who does, right? But they could have made a lot more noise this year. Think about what they were able to do. Minus 35 points a game on paper with Jaden Stone and Tucker DeVries, beating 3 top 10 teams, 4 top 25 teams, beating Kansas in a home opener for the first time in 33 years. Like they have accomplished a lot this year without the services of the best player on the team and another 20 points per game scorer leading Javon Small to have just an incredible year. So, he's done an amazing job with what they had. But
Absolutely.
man, if they would have gave him just 500K more or a million more, they could have really had a special year. I think he knows it. I think he knew it then. I'm not saying he resents it. I'm saying that it's got to improve. And if he's going to have these conversations with other teams, West Virginia has to make a pledge and a commitment here, contractually, because he's earned it, contractually and NIL. And we've got it to give. Now, it may not be Indiana's level,
Yeah.
but we've, with the revenue sharing model coming in, we're going to be at that 20.5 million sharing. We're going to be able to do it all. So if that's the case, there's no reason we can't compete in basketball and football. And West Virginia's in the Big 12. We have a great basketball history. It's not Indiana, but it's certainly good enough. And I think you could talk a guy like Devries, who hasn't been a lot of places. He stayed at Creighton for 16 years or whatever it was, or I forget how many years. It was a lot of years. So, this is a guy that I look at and say, we want you. I think, that's the pitch we would say to him, is that as a fan base, we're sold on him.
Sure.
He fits what we need. He fits what we want. He's got the toughness we love. Literally, he plays that Bob Huggins style. Like, there's a lot. So I personally believe we want him here. I think we can make that pitch. But if an Indiana comes calling, or even there is some trepidation for Iowa because that's the home, that's the home state.
Yeah. Pulling
Even
at the
though
heart.
it's in shambles. Right? Yeah. It's in shambles as a program.
Yeah.
And it's a total rebuild, way worse than what we have. We've got a top probably 5 or 6 basketball facility because Bob Huggins, dedicated his life to make it happen. So it's an interesting thing, man. I don't know. I think if Indiana actually comes calling and throws everything they have at him, it's going to be almost impossible to keep him.
Well, and that's the thing, and that is what is going in the favor of Indiana. You feel like is if IU calls, or if Duke calls, or if Kentucky calls, people not only pick up the phone, they most likely say yes. But I can admit that hasn't always been the case. We've had people shut it down. We've had people say no. And it's because this new era of college basketball where you can be competitive at other places rather than just the big names, blue bloods, old bloods, new bloods, whatever. And you bring up an interesting fact about NIL money, because college basketball is so different than every other sport, because you don't have to have 80. Yeah, you don't have to have 80 plus good players to be competitive. You need 8.
6. Yeah,
7. Yeah, 7, whatever. One player can make all the difference in college basketball to make it to the NCAA tournament. And so if they give him that money at West Virginia, maybe he hangs around and tries to see what he can build and be that dude there in West Virginia. But if you go to Indiana, and whether it's him or somebody else, you can get as much as you want. And that one singular player can literally make all the difference. And so it really just depends on if Indiana makes the call. I think he's on the list. He's starting to get brought up more. If it gets to that, then it would probably be a really hard job to turn down, I have to admit.
One other thing I will pitch for West Virginia side of things is, we've got a recruiting class coming in thanks to Chester Frazier and Darren. That is truly, it's probably, it would probably be the best in our school's history. 3 McDonald's All-American candidates.
That's awesome.
3 4-star guys. That's good for anybody these days, especially.
Absolutely.
So, all top 180 guys, and so I think and we have a lot of guys coming back, including Tucker DeVries, who was obviously a 2-time player of the year in the Missouri Valley, that was averaging almost 15 points a game in only 8 games this year. And there's a lot to build on with this team. Could he take it to Indiana or somewhere else? Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. But I do think there is something here to build on. And the way they develop freshmen and have been known to do that, I think it's something to talk about, because, man, that'd be a double punch in the gut if you're talking this recruiting class. And also Darren, and also Tucker. Like, it's a lot to lose for us.
Which is what you see nowadays when these coaches jump ship and go somewhere else. I mean, not speaking to DeVries in particular, but in terms of the whole loyalty thing, right? Fans are asking for players to hang around and stay with your program, but these coaches just flake out and go wherever they want to, and they typically take their talent with them. The best example is John Calipari when he left Kentucky and he went to Arkansas. Look at the Razorbacks. It's literally the same Kentucky team from a year ago. They're just wearing Arkansas red instead of Big Blue Nation blue. I mean, it's
great point.
That's how college basketball works nowadays, because you want to stick with your coach, stick with the system. And that could happen, whether it's, again, if it's DeVries or if it's anybody else at IU. That's how this game works now. And it can be so beneficial to the hiring team and so crushing to the losing team.
Wow. Yeah, I totally agree, man. This has been a fun conversation. Before we let you get out of here, man, tell everybody one more time where they can find you, because we've grown a few hundred people since we did it last.
Yeah. So, again, if you want to check out and tune into the latest on the Indiana coaching search, the best place to do it is with the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. However you find West Virginia, you can find us the same way. Any of your audio platforms, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, or if you just search Locked On Hoosiers on YouTube, you're going to find it there. Daily posts, daily videos about Indiana football, basketball, hopefully making the NCAA tournament, and then trying to find our new head coach in Bloomington. All that on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by TurboTax. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, and everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, final segment here on today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. So thank you so much for being here. Hopefully you enjoy my conversation with Mountaineer Paul, man. He is incredible. He is one of the best we have on the Locked On Podcast Network, and had a good time chopping it up with him, talking about DeVries, talking about Indiana, and whether all that thing is going to happen. But we still have games going on right now for the Big Ten tournament. And if you're watching this on Thursday when it comes out, we have Indiana and Oregon today coming up this morning, right? The first game from the Big Ten tournament. But man, the first day of the Big Ten tournament was really, really fun. The Wednesday games were incredible. You had Northwestern taking down Minnesota, despite all odds, right? Against all odds, I should say, is what Northwestern and Chris Collins would tell you. What a wild scene and story that was, where their hotel rooms there in Indy didn't have any air conditioning, 85 degrees and up. I know it's only March, but 85 degrees in a hotel room is pretty miserable, okay? They said they were sitting in bed with ice buckets, rubbing it on their bodies to keep themselves cool at night. I mean, what a crazy thing for the Northwestern team to have to go through. And then they come out and win the game. They come out and beat Minnesota and move on to the second round. And Chris Collins he had some quotes, man, and took shots at the Big Ten. He said, yeah, this is nothing new. We're used to being treated this way by this league. And I was like, oh, that's pretty harsh there from Chris Collins and Northwestern, but hey, maybe it's true. And regardless, they win the game and beat Minnesota 72-64. This next game shocked me. It was Iowa and Ohio State. And we've talked about Ohio State, right? Because we just beat Ohio State, Indiana did, this past weekend, which put the Buckeyes in a must-win situation in their first game of the Big Ten tournament to make it to the NCAA tournament. And they didn't get it done. They fall short. Iowa beats them 77-70, an Iowa team that has absolutely nothing to play for. And Ohio State dropped the ball, and they very well could be out of the NCAA tournament because of this bad loss to Iowa. And then the final game was USC and Rutgers. And you're talking about two good coaches. You're talking about a lot of talent on the floor, right? Especially with Rutgers. And I don't know if any game is going to be able to top how good this one was. USC, after an 11-point lead at the half, they blow it. We go to overtime. Then we go to double overtime, and they eventually pull it out 97-89 in double overtime. USC beats Rutgers in the Big Ten tournament. That was just Wednesday. We've got 4 games coming up on Thursday. Obviously, Indiana and Oregon playing on the first game on the Big Ten Network. Oregon, as of today, game day, favored by 2.5. We've talked about why Indiana needs to win this game. We feel like we're okay either way, but a win here against the Ducks would make us feel really, really good and have no stress on Selection Sunday. If we lose this game, then we're going to be worrying come Sunday and hoping to get in to the NCAA tournament. Following that is Northwestern and Wisconsin. I think Northwestern's run will probably come to an end. Iowa will take on Illinois. I think Illinois will have their way with that Iowa team. They're favored by 10.5 points in this afternoon's game. And then tonight is USC and Purdue. Does USC have anything left in the tank, right? Do they have anything left to go against a Purdue team who's going to be fresh, who's playing their first game of the Big Ten tournament? I think they're a lot of fun games. I really, really do. And of course, for Indiana, winner of this game moves on to play Michigan State on Friday. I've said I like that matchup. I think we could do it again, but we've got to take care of Oregon first. And I'm excited for this game. I am, because we had chances to win in Eugene just a couple of days ago. If you don't give up a 10-0 run down the stretch and let Shellstad hit one from 58 feet, you probably do win the game. Instead, you're having to fight for your lives right now. But there's no better way to do it. And I feel like Indiana has performed at its best here down the stretch when they are playing for their lives, but they're also playing a little free, right? And it seems like this team has gotten to that point where it's like, man, let's go play. Let's go have fun. Let's see what happens. And you could possibly see Mike Woodson coach his final game at IU, because if you lose this game and you don't make it to the tournament, he's done. And we're going to have a new coach in 2025. Of course, we talked so much about that, but I just have a feeling we're going to find a way. I have a feeling Indiana gets it done against Oregon, will make it to the NCAA tournament, and from there, it's all about the matchups, and you just never know what's going to happen. But really, really pumped for this game today between IU and Oregon, and all these other matchups that we have as well, because don't forget, you still have Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, and Michigan all waiting in the quarterfinals on Friday to get their opponent. And Indiana will play Michigan State, the winner of Northwestern, Wisconsin, right? You have Iowa, Illinois, and then USC and Purdue. So really, really excited for what these games hold. Just to give you an idea on who plays who really quickly here. Again, Indiana will play Oregon, Northwestern to Wisconsin, winner plays UCLA, winner of Iowa, Illinois will play Maryland, and then winner of USC and Purdue will play Michigan. I believe I'm 1 and 2 in my picks in the first round. I think I picked Northwestern, Ohio State, and Rutgers. Did I not? I'd have to go back and look. I can't remember. I definitely did not pick Iowa to beat Ohio State. So definitely missed that one. Just quick picks here. I'll take Indiana. I'll take Wisconsin. I'll take Illinois, and I'll take Purdue. I'll take 3 of the favorites, and I'll take Indiana to upset Oregon in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to watch it. We'll have reaction stuff going up tomorrow. Plus, you never know what's going to happen in this crazy coaching search for IU as well. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Again, cannot express enough how much it means that you are here and watching and listening to this show each and every day. For my audio listeners, follow us there, turn on notifications, leave us those 5-star reviews. Those are super helpful to us and really do appreciate that. For my YouTube watchers, like the video, hit that thumbs up, leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Are you a Devries fan from West Virginia? Do you think Indiana beats Oregon today and moves on and eventually makes it to the NCAA tournament? And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. All right, we are back tomorrow, Hoosier fans. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.